Welcome to this dotCMS training on how to create an event. Once you log into dotCMS, this is the screen that you will see. And you will need to click on the Content tab and the Search button to get to the Content dashboard. Once you're at the Content dashboard, then under the Type drop-down menu, you will select for Event. Then you will select this triple vertical dots teal button for Add New Content. This will bring up the event dashboard, and there will be a few tabs that we'll be going through. Again, one of the most important fields that you'll encounter as part of this process is going to be the host field. You will need to make sure to select the drop-down, click on the plus symbol, and choose the appropriate folder to save this event in the system. Again, any fields that are highlighted red are required fields, so you're going to need to fill in those for sure. And then there's a few other fields that are also optional. The title field is one of the required fields, and this is the name of the event as you would like it to appear on the website. So it might be something like test event. Now, if you are going to be conducting a series of events, hosting a series of events, or you're going to be taking your training on the road to various locations across the state, that kind of thing, where this would not just be a standalone event, then you might also consider using some more descriptive language in the name of your title so that it's differentiated on the event feed on your website. An event feed looks something like this, where it shows the listing of all of the different events. So one of those examples would be this MSU Advanced Degree Commencement Fall 2019, and then CA&R Undergraduate Commencement Fall 2019. These are similarly related events, but the titles are just a little bit different and they're more descriptive. So if I were to make my event more descriptive, let's say this is an event that I would be taking place at different locations, I might put in test event Lansing, or I might put in test event Detroit, that kind of thing. Now, if I'm conducting some kind of a training where there will be multiple classes, I might do test event class 1, class 2, that kind of thing. So that there's some differentiation in there for me for what I need to do. And then the URL title, I put a 5 in here because I've obviously created multiple test events as part of my trainings, and I need to have a unique URL so that this isn't a duplicative event. So you can customize your URL title at the very end of the web address as mentioned in previous trainings. Now the summary field for the first time in the trainings is actually highlighted red, meaning it's a required field. And that's because when you go to an event feed, there's always some kind of short statement that's a teaser to help you to understand a little bit more about this event before actually clicking into it. So typically this would be the first sentence or event description. And include punctuation is helpful as well. Note there's only 256 characters available for this field, so it's very important that it's short and sweet and concise, whatever information that you choose to include in that field. Next is the image field, the image description, and image caption fields. You can upload an image for your event. It's not a required thing. Most often I don't end up uploading an image for an event, but it's something that you might choose to do so. And if you do, you're going to select the Browse button, which will bring you to the Select a File window where you can click the plus symbol, navigate to your website, Uploads folder, and click into your Images folder. Now there may be some images here that you might be interested in using. like maybe this cyclist at sunset image. And then in the image description field, you would need to include some more information for folks who may be using assistive technology like a screen reader to navigate the site. So for example, this might be cyclists riding at sunset, period. Now you can choose whether or not your image should have a caption. This would be text that would appear under the image visible on the page. What might be helpful for an image caption is, especially if you've had a professional photographer take photos and that's one of the photos you might be using, then you can give them proper credit within that image caption. Now what we're seeing here in this image crop preview is showing you what a horizontal image crop looks like, as well as a square image crop. Now this is assuming that you might not be making some kind of a custom cropped horizontal image or a square image for use on your website or within social media. So horizontal images tend to be used on the social platforms, and then square images tend to be used on specific widgets within websites. So it's typically 4 squares on a home page most often. So if you're not pleased with what this image crop preview looks like, then you can always go in and upload a custom cropped image into one of these 2 fields so that you have the more appropriate image to show for those areas. The next required field is the start date. It is not highlighted red, but it does have a little asterisk here. dotCMS is a little wonky when it comes to an event, so it's not quite sure what to do with those, which was interesting. It does mention that it is required here. So what's required is that you have to have a start date and an end date. So we can click into the drop-down menu here. Now I'm going to say, let's say this event's going to take place in December, let's say on the 11th, and you'll notice that the end date field automatically populates, assuming that this event is a 1-day event. Now, if your event is going to take place over some consecutive days, like it might be a 2 or 3 day conference, then you could select for whatever the end date is that you might want for this event. Now, if this is an event that's going to be taking place on different dates across the spectrum of time, that's where I recommend that you actually create separate event postings for those kind of events, so that once an event goes off of a calendar with its start date, you don't then lose your whole thread of what might be related events within one event grouping. So again, if you have multiple events across a spectrum of time, instead of doing it as one event posting, make them as multiple event postings so that they remain on your calendar. All right, the other thing that you're going to see here is a start time field and an end time field, and then there's also a time field, which is a text field. Now this may seem a little bit confusing, so let me explain this a little bit more. If you know both the start time and the end time for your event, then you can select for those in these 2 drop-down options here. Now, if you only know the start time, don't click into the start time field, because if you do that, it's going to record this start time, but then it's going to record this as the end time. This happens to be the time of day that this recording is taking place and when I'm making my test event, and that's going to get published as my end time for my event, which is why there is a time field here, because there's a lot of events that get posted on websites that we don't actually have all the information for, or they only provide a start time. And so this would allow you to insert this information so that it's visible on the website without getting caught up in the requirements of those 2 time fields. So for example, if my event starts at 8 a.m. and I don't know an end time, I can just have that inserted into the time field, and then on my event listing where it's showing this timing in here, it would only show that first start time, but it would show up in this information so that that would be included, which is important. All right, the other way that this time field can be helpful is especially if you're doing a conference and you do know the start and end time for which you can insert that information, but you might have registration starting at a different time than the event start time of your, for your event. So in those instances, it might be registration starts at 7:30 a.m. and you might have a start time of, let's say, 8:30 a.m. You might have an end time of 4 p.m. So that's what it might look like if you actually use all three fields together. So again, if you only know the start time, just fill in this time field. If you know both your start and your end time, skip the time field and just insert information into the start time and end time fields. If you have a conference, then you can add in some additional descriptive information when you do know the start and end time that might be more helpful in terms of timing. Now there is this repeats field here. It's broken in dotCMS, which is why we still have to create separate events for repeated events. Next, you're going to see two fields related to location. Location and geolocation. Let's start with geolocation first. Geolocation is going to give you, let me show you an example, a get directions button, which will help you navigate to the specific location using Google Maps. So when we get to the geolocation field, you want to type in the address for the location of this event. You can just start typing and you'll see that there's different options that start to populate as the system tries to figure out which location it is that you're referring to. So I can select this actual address that I'm looking at for my event. I now have a lot of longitude and latitude showing for that GPS. Then I want to copy this address and paste it into the location field. Now you might be wondering, why would I put the location in two different places, that address? And that's because at the top of your event, you can have the exposed address showing people where they're going to go for this event, whether it's somewhere on campus or it might be a Marriott hotel or somewhere else. It's better to have the exposed address somewhere where people can see it, rather than having the only place they have this information is having to get directions in order to find out what the address is. So that's why we duplicate this information. And then again, if you're on campus with this event, then you might want to include the name of the building that it will take place in. Or as I mentioned before, it might be an outside venue like the Marriott Hotel, in which case you can insert that information that will provide the viewer with some more of those details that they might be looking for. Next is the contact information field. This is where you're going to insert who might be the contacts for this event. Now there's a couple of different ways to do this. Now let's say, for example, your main office is going to be the point of contact for your event. And there might be a main office email and a main office phone number that are generic and not used by a specific person. If that's the case, then you can type that in along with an email address and then a phone number. And that would be how you would insert contact information if it's just generic contact information. Now you should include contact information because people may have questions about your event, and if you don't have all of the information showing in your description, they may still have questions that need to get answered. All right, so let's say, for example, the point of contact for this event is not generic like this, that it's actually someone that's on staff or someone that's within another unit within the college, and we would like to insert their name so that they can be contacted, and it would include their work email address as well as their office phone number. So this would go directly to them rather than to a generic number. Now, if you know that this person has a profile in the system, i.e. a person profile, then you can type their name in as it appears on their profile. And then once this event gets published, their name will be linked to their profile page or their biography page. And then people can go there to get that phone number and address. So you shouldn't need to include other contact information in that field. There are times where the person is not from MSU or they don't have a person profile in the system because they might be from another unit on campus but not part of the college. And in those instances, you would need to type in their name and then their email address and then their phone number. And that's how you would insert information for someone who does not have a person's profile, but that we have a specific person with contact information that we will be inserting for this. Now, if this happens to be the instance where it's the person who has a profile, then what you'll do is take an additional action once we get to the relationships tab. And I'll go over that in just a moment when we get to that point. Next is the description field. And this is extremely important because you want to insert as much information into this area as you can, and you don't want to leave it blank. So I usually start by going back to the summary field because that's normally the start of my description. And I can paste that information into this description field. Now, additional information that might be helpful to include would be if there's any particular speakers and you might link to their profiles on their websites. It could be what topics they might be presenting on. It could be there's a cost to attend, and so there might be some how to register information that you want to share. It could be that there's continuing education or there's special parking instructions, or you want to let people know what's included in the registration, like you get a meal and a parking pass, that kind of thing. Whatever those details are that you want to include, you can do that in this area and format it using this WYSIWYG editor. WYSIWYG editor formatting is covered in another tutorial, but you can insert all of this information into this field and then it can get shared with the visitors when you publish this event. Now, I did mention some registration details, and there is a field called link. Now, when this gets published live, this event will show a register button. And that will take you to where you want to register for this event. So when you're doing a description and you get to the how to apply or how to register for this event information, you don't want to include that registration link in that information. You can just simply paste that web address right into this link field. This link field is only for web addresses. It's not for any other kind of text. And then you can reference in that how to register information about selecting the register button to complete their process. That way you can actually get this register button, and then you won't have duplicative information for a link actually in the text for where to register. All right, so that takes us through the content tab. Next is the relationships tab. Now, one of the things you're going to want to do is make a relationship to your organization or to your data set, depending on which type of group you are, so that this can get put onto your event feed. Most often when event listing widgets are created, they are created with using that relationship to that organization or that data set. Now, as a refresh to organizations and data sets, organizations tend to be departments or main units. The college website is considered an organization. MSU Extension main site is considered an organization. Data set websites are things like academic programs, extension or topic websites, and then county extension websites are considered data sets. So you would make a relationship to whichever type of group that you are, and the relationship process is exactly the same. So I'm going to make a relationship as an organization because that's what I am with my demo site. So I'm going to click into that relate box. It's going to bring up the search window, and it already has my organization showing as something I can select for my matching results, and I'm going to click the relate button. And now my organization relationship is showing up underneath there. I also mentioned that if somebody has a profile in the system, that there's an additional step we need to take once we get to relationships related to point of contact. So if you'll notice, when we were viewing this particular event here, there is what's called a related people section at the bottom of this page. And that's because a point of contact relationship has been made. So you're going to want to make that relationship as well as adding in that person's name into the Contact Us field from the Content tab. So you're going to select the Relate button. You're going to type in the name of the person. Or if they're already showing on the screen, you can select for them, like Jane User. And I can make that relationship. And now Jane User will be that point of contact. Now in my content, I need to go down here and make my appropriate edit here. Jane User as my contact information. Let me go back to relationships. Now we can see that point of contact is showing here. My organization relationship has been made. And there are some instances where the place relationship may need to be made. And this is more for specific targeted locations that have already been input into the system, most often related to extension or to specific locations like Dunbar Forest is an example of that. And if your event happens to take place at one of those, you can check the relate button to see what kind of places show up for a matching result that you might be able to select for. So I've got a couple of different demo places and a county entry place. Those aren't necessarily applicable for this particular tutorial, but that is what you would select for if you are creating an event of that nature. Now tags, this is also very important. When we're looking at an event, down at the bottom, there's also a list of tags, and this can take you to additional content related to these tags that might be of interest to you. Like if we select webinars, what dotCMS is going to do is it's going to pull all of the related tags from all of the websites within our system, and it's going to pull all that information together into one place. So it looks like there's a couple of event postings, there's an article posting, and then here's also another event posting. And so that's why tags are very important in the process that we use for our events. So this might be dotCMS, might be a tag, and again, if there's a pre-selected tag in the system, you can select for that. Webinars was also mentioned as a tag. This particular event doesn't happen to be one of those, but I'm just showing you an example of a different type of tag that you could use for that. And then you might need to create another kind of tag. So let's just. Now, if I wanted to make a tag called test tag, you're going to see that there aren't any pre-populated or suggested tags for me to select for. So if I want to make this a tag that I'm going to use in the future or for this event, all I need to do is hit the Enter key on my keyboard, and now this will be a usable tag once this event is published. I'm going to remove that because we don't want a test tag created in the system. All right. Now there is the date field, the date tab, and you're going to notice that there is a system expiration date that has been input into the system. And it's 30 days after your event occurs, this event will be unpublished in the system. Now the reason for this is because once you have an event occur on your event feed, it often falls off of that feed and we don't think about it anymore. So we don't think that it's live anymore because it's not showing on our event calendar. But that's not necessarily true. The event is still live and searchable online in the different browsers, Google search, Bing search, whatever you want to search for, your website search. You could still find this expired event, and if you happen to have a reoccurring annual event, and let's say there might be some conference from 2018, but you haven't posted the 2019 information yet, they could Google and find the 2018 information, not pay attention to the year, and think that that's got all the information they need for the current year's event that hasn't actually been published yet. So it's caused some confusion, and that's why there's the system expiration date that's been put into place to help limit that confusion. All right, the rest of the tabs aren't used at this point, so we're going to pass on that. I will say a note on history, it's not showing at the moment, but when you publish an event, you will have the history tab be something that's clickable. And this is because you've actually published a content that can be edited. Now, let's say you go into this event and you make some changes to it, and you publish it, then you would actually have 2 entries under history, and you could actually bring back a previous version if you would like to. So that's the purpose of the history tab. All right, so now that we've gone through all the tabs, we need to take a specific action. Save draft will save this event to the back end as unpublished. You can go back and make changes before publishing it live. Check links. This will check that description field in your event to see if you actually have any hyperlinks that are have been selected for. And if there are, it will check those links for you. If there are errors, it will let you know what the errors are so that you can update those hyperlinks. If there are not any errors, then your event will get published to your website. And then there's the publish button, which just publishes your event live. So we're going to say that we've got all the information that we would like for this particular event, and we're going to select the publish button. You'll notice that it has been unlocked since we hit the publish button. And as a refresher for those who are unfamiliar with the locking and unlocking process, if you happen to click save instead of publish when you are creating an event, it will keep your event locked. And you will need to actually select for, let me click on the lock button there, you would need to select for releasing that lock if you happen to select for save draft. All right, so we have published our event. My test event is now showing up in the listing here. You actually can see that the event is locked. That's what a locked event looks like. I'm actually going to click back into this and unlock my event. I'm going to release that lock, click the X button or cancel button. And now that locking symbol goes away, so anyone who needs to access this event can do so without having any issues. And that's how you publish an event.